Desiree Dubonnet here again. Today's lecture is about the flu, influenza. What to do, how to protect your family, how to protect our society, all these different things. What do we do? In April this year, I was going to Mexico. I go many times a year, and I was going to do a lecture in Mexico. I got onto the airplane, and there was absolutely no word whatsoever about flu. When I got off the plane in Mexico City, everybody was wearing masks, gloves, big signs, wash your hands. Major, major panic about the swine flu, the H1N1 virus. And this happened while I was on the airplane. All this talk, they were going to close down the airplanes, everything. I flew to Puerto Vallarta from Mexico City, and there was just no problem, etc. And here we have, see this picture when I came back. These are two of the friends that came with me to Mexico City, and I'm on the other side of that picture. They didn't show me because I had this ugly face. Everybody was asking me about Mexico and this virus and everything. What was going on here? We have a major problem around the world with the flu virus. What can we do? The word influenza comes from influence. In the old days, a couple of thousand years ago, people were influenced by the stars, by the evil eye, many different things. And that's what they called influenza, influence. And that's how it got started. Now this tells us that viruses are as old as mankind. Just what is a virus? What does it do? And how does this come about? Well, you see, inside our body we have DNA. DNA transmits data into RNA. RNA will then move away into other parts of the cell and do things. As multicellular organisms, we need to have communication between the cells. Now, we've established in our science that there's actually even photonic communication. There's the ability of one cell to talk to another through photons, electromagnetic radiation. There's other chemicals, hormones, receptor sites. There's a host of these different things, and these things are all happening at electrical levels because it's all the body electric. Now, sometimes the body electric gets overwhelmed by many other things. You get overwhelmed by toxicity, stress, trauma. Your body gets old, tired, fatigued for a host of different reasons. And you might not have the ability to communicate cell to cell. And sometimes you might be toxic. The body had built up toxins, autotoxins. Not just toxins from outside, but toxins from inside. This is why we have toilets, because we all need to detox. Now, sometimes when we get toxic and there's an inability of cells to communicate, the body would spin off a type of RNA that would go off, and this was the beginning of what was a virus, a communication. The DNA would make an RNA that would say detox. And this RNA developed slowly into a virus. It was not a mistake in nature. Nature doesn't make mistakes. Nature doesn't wake up one day and, oh, geez, I made the pit of the avocado too big. These things are for reasons. Nature has its reasons. It's hard for us to understand. But the virus was not really a mistake. It was an ability to communicate, and to communicate detox. Break up cells, get rid of them. Inside the body we have catabolism as well as anabolism. Anabolism means we're going to make cells, but we also have to have catabolic hormones to destroy cells. This is just the nature of life and death, and viruses are just a continuation of that. These viruses were able to act as RNA components. They are not living things. A living thing is something that can metabolize and reproduce on its own. A virus cannot do so. A virus needs to go into a cell and use the cell's mechanism to reproduce. There are certain adenoviruses that are an exception to this rule, but we're talking about most of the viruses, including the influenza types. Thus, these non-living organisms are mechanisms that have a message. Carry a chemical message and change other factors. This is very exciting for the future, to be able to think that we could use this same technique to carry a new type of DNA into cells of people that have been weakened. This is exactly where the new science will go. But that's not the topic of this tape. What we're talking about today is what to do about the flu, the influenza, and just what do we need to do to be able to stop this, and how do we protect our families. The first thing for us to realize is that the virus is part of a natural process, and that we need to work with the natural process. And if we start having that as an idea, it'll be more effective in us dealing with the flu. Now, the next thing we have is another word that comes in, cold. We catch a cold. Where did that come from? Well, the major factor that happens in catching viruses is going to be fatty acid metabolism. Fatty acids will make up the membrane of all of the cells of the body. This is how the body makes up membranes. And this is how life started, with fatty acid bubbles that were sensitive to light. But in today's world, in our cells, inside the cells, there are membranes, and the membranes are made up of fatty acids. We will get our fatty acids largely from plants. We take in these fatty acids, change these fatty acids, build new fatty acids, and we make the fatty acids that will go into the membranes. There are 4 what we say essential fatty acids: linoleic, oleic, linoleic, and arachidonic. These 4 essential fatty acids we cannot make in the body, and we need these to be inputted. We need these, and these mostly come from plant sources. Inside plants, we will find unsaturated fatty acids. When we find these unsaturated compounds from plants, they come into the body and they saturate by picking up different types of charged particles, different types of ions, different types of toxicities, and that's what they do. So whenever we have an animal oil, an animal fatty acid, an animal oil, well, what we find? We'll find it saturated. We will find the unsaturated ones mostly in plants. This is where we're supposed to take these in. We need these every day, and we need a wide variety of these different fatty acids. Now, medical doctors have said essential as a definition of the essential, meaning that if you don't get them, you die. What I found out is that there's more than 88 fatty acids that are needed by the human body, and if we don't get them, we get sick. So what I call the Nelson essential fatty acids. Medical people, essential for life or death, but to me, essential for wellness or sickness, because we want people to be well and healthy. People need to intake these fatty acids, and they will come from plant sources. They will need to be extracted by the digestive system unless they are given in liquid form. If we get the actual oils, and we get the salads, etc., if we can get the natural olive oil, it's going to be highly absorbable. It's going to be more easily absorbed. We won't have to extract it from the lettuce if we take a lettuce juice, a juice that has been cold processed, by the way, because fatty acids are all heat sensitive. Heat will destroy them. Heavy-duty cooking, heavy-duty microwaves will destroy these fatty acids. We will get components, and our body will have to take energy to make new fatty acids. But if we are taking just little bits of these fatty acids every day, we'll be able to get them. Now, back to the word cold. Our bodies are made up of fatty acids, mostly at the cell membrane. We also have a fatty acid pool flowing through the blood of free fatty acids, FFA, free fatty acids flowing through the blood that are used to make cell membranes, but they're also used in stressful conditions to be converted into sugar, because that's what we need. In comes a Black Panther. What to do? Black Panther comes in. When the Black Panther comes in, it's feet don't fail me now. You get that reaction, a stress reaction. The body now needs some extra energy now. You don't have time to eat. You can't see the Black Panther and say, give me a candy bar. It would take too long to get that energy anyways. Your body will take fatty acids out of the cell membrane, convert them into the glucose that you need to get your feet to move away from the Black Panther. Stress will rob those fatty acids. We also, in our society today, do not get enough fatty acids. This puts a metabolic load on us to make the fatty acids because we're not getting them in our diet. Other different toxins and other things will also rob us of fatty acids. When we get fatty acid deficient, the first sign of fatty acid deficiency is chill, cold. If you're in a room and you feel a chill and nobody else felt that chill, you feel a little cold and nobody else felt that, that's because, almost all the time, because you are now fatty acid deficient. You're not getting enough fatty acids and your body's leaching them out of the cell membranes. At this point, you will be much more susceptible to the influenza virus, the influence of the virus. So thereby, that's why we called it cold. And the word catch a cold was because that chill was do this. The other thing is you're outside, and all of a sudden you get that cold blast of air. You get a chill. Your body starts to shiver. What happens? When you get that chill, when you get that shiver, your body is taking fatty acids out of the membranes, converting them into energy to maintain the shiver. Cold. Exposure to cold, fatty acid, sensitivity to cold. That's why we have the word cold. What does this tell us? Fatty acids are part of what we need to do. Now, we're talking about what we need to do. Let's think. We're asking what to do. Now, when we have anything broken, television, car, boat, army, economy, whatever, one of the first things we start thinking about is, are we intaking the proper things? Is your car getting good gas? Do you have good oil? Is the outgo, the exhaust, is it proper? See, in the natural world, whatever happens that's wrong, the first thing we start to think about is intake and outgo. But we don't do that in the human body. Why? Because the chemical companies want you to think how to input a patented synthetic so that somebody makes money. Rather than thinking about food, about what to do through food, they want you to start thinking what type of synthetic drug to take. That is wrong. We need to start thinking about how to deal with the body natural. The vaccinations have been proven not to be very effective at all. In fact, they've been a waste. The first vaccination for this type of flu, actually more people died from the vaccination. When we look at the true levels of problems, tuberculosis, etc., and look at what the epidemics are of the flu virus, we can see that there's much more drastic problems in medicine. Malpractice has been accelerated because of the synthetic drugs. And the whole idea of what you take for a medicine, rather than it being foods or vitamins or natural, has all shifted towards some type of a magic pill. A magic pill that, in comparison to placebo, is often found not to work. And people who tell you this and people who talk about natural medicine are hated, pushed, disdained. And yet allopathy spends so much money, vast amounts of money, compared to what is spent on homeopathy, etc. And there's a fear program that makes people afraid, guaranteed to drive people out of fear. And we need to be cautious of these viruses because they can produce problems. But do we need to obey everything that's being told to us? We need to be able to think, does big money, does big pharma, does tobacco, etc. Because they are making the police prepare to put us into concentration camps if we don't do that vaccination. They're prepared to put us in the places we don't want to be. And deep inside the brain, there's a lizard part of the brain that is able to only see how much money is there. And the H1N1 vaccine really doesn't work. We need to look at more natural ways. The actual virus, that entity, inside the human body would build up antibodies. Now we're going to take that natural virus in vaccination. So vaccination is a natural process. We're not really using a synthetic. We're going to take that virus, now what we're talking about, the H1N1 virus now. Right now people are making that vaccination. What are they doing? They're taking that virus, putting it into, let's say, eggs. They found out that inside eggs, something inside the egg would disable that virus and make it weak, so it wouldn't really work. Then they could take that virus out in quantity and give it into a patient. Vaccination, one of the first persons who actually were doing this, we go back to Jenner and his idea with the milkmaids and what he was doing with that type of vaccination, etc. He was a homeopath, and he was working with the principle that like treats like. Vaccination is a homeopathic process. We're going to be taking that virus that causes a disease and using that to treat. That's a principle called homeopathy, like treating like. What are some of the dangers of this process? Well, the danger inside the process of vaccination is we might be not really killing all those viruses. We might have some active virus left over in that vaccination. We might have some toxicity, what we use to kill, because many times they use a lead compound or other different things to kill the virus, and we might have toxicity levels that are going to be getting into the body. And the third thing that really happens probably most is sometimes we're just using massive doses of the virus. You're on the bus and you get exposed to a virus. It just takes like 1 or 2 of those virus exposures. You touch something and touch your nose, and all of a sudden that virus gets in there and it starts to replicate. 1 or 2 viruses, boom, you can get a full-born, cold. You can get the H1N1. You can be exposed. Now, when they give you the vaccination, you get massive doses of these viruses. Massive, massive doses, which are very much beyond the normal exposure, dramatically, tens of thousands times beyond the normal types of exposure, overwhelming your immune system, and this can create a problem.
Well, hello, America. Have you decided what you're going to do about the swine flu vaccine yet? Have you heard anybody yet talk about it that you trust? Will you take your chances with the swine flu or the vaccine? Will you take the vaccine, give it to your children? How much do you trust your government? I think that's the main question. Do you trust your government in a couple of things? A, that this crisis is even real. And B, that they have competently worked with the best medicine to develop, distribute, and administer a potentially life-saving vaccine. Do you believe that? Are you even troubled by the fact that we have to ask these questions of ourselves? I am, quite honestly. I can't believe that we live in the world that we do now, where there's such a lack of trust. Unfortunately, there is that credibility issue in Washington with science, with the science that comes from the world organizations like the WHO, or really it's the UN that bothers me so much. We have been lied to before. We've been lied to by the media. We've been lied to by both sides of the aisle and with politicians, and doctors are wrong. I'm not alone in asking these questions. There's a recent poll out by Consumer Reports that found that 2/3 of parents plan to delay or skip getting their children the H1N1 shot altogether. Flu pandemics have struck before, and with deadly results. The biggest one was 1918 to 1919. It was the Spanish flu pandemic. It swept the planet, killing at least 40 million people worldwide. This was the nasty one here in America. More than 500,000 people died in the United States. 40 years later, there was another one. 1957, 1958, Asian flu hit the world, causing about 70,000 deaths in the United States. We also had the Hong Kong flu from 1968 to 69 that caused about 34,000 deaths in the United States. Earlier this year, there were hundreds of reported deaths from H1N1, but it paled in comparison to the death rate of even the annual garden variety flu. About 36,000 people each year die just from the seasonal flu here in the U.S. Right now, according to the experts I have talked to, H1N1 may actually be less virulent than its predecessor earlier this year, although it still has proven at times to be capable of taking life. The fear, of course, is that a more deadly strain of H1N1 will circulate. That's what happened in 1918, 1919. First, I think it started in about 1916. It was fine, 17 fine, and then 1918, it swept through and killed a lot of people. Among the most compelling, there is a concern that the vaccine was rushed to market in just a few months. Was it developed carefully enough? Who developed it? What was the process? Is it reasonable that we went from 0 to 60 this quickly with this vaccine? The vaccine also contains thimerosal. Some experts believe it can cause severe damage in some people. They argue that the vast majority of people who take this vaccine would tolerate it just fine, but there would be some that would be more susceptible to those effects. Dr. Kent Holtorf, he is an expert in infectious diseases. He warns that there is a risk with this multiple vaccine approach of a side effect very similar to the Gulf War syndrome. He stresses that the flu mist nasal version doesn't have the same negative immune system modulating potential.
Now, it's the same technique, but there are multiple versions. It hasn't been adequately tested, but I think that is a minor point compared to the problems with the vaccines in general, with the thimerosal. And we've had patients, we treat a lot of chronic conditions that have been helped elsewhere, a lot of chronic fatigue syndrome. We have patients come in, about a third of those patients can pinpoint pretty close to day that they were normal, and then all of a sudden they can't get out of bed. And I'm telling you, about 20% of the time, I asked you, did you have the flu vaccine 2 weeks before? Yes. And I send letters to the FDA. I get a form letter back. They won't do anything. So all these things become underreported. It's all these studies, they say it's not a problem, just like the studies funded by the tobacco companies saying tobacco doesn't cause cancer. And people saying, see, it's fine, it's fine.
Well,
that's what I'm worried about.
I also agree with you. We shouldn't assume that vaccines are purely safe. But the whole thimerosal question has been studied and studied. The FDA has basically said there's enough mercury in there for a portion of fish. It's the kind of mercury, it's the kind of mercury that's metabolized out of the body.
It is not. You're reading too many of the pharmaceutical company brochures.
There's no evidence that it's associated with autism.
That is not true.
And by the way, you can also get this vaccine without it. You can
right,
get
right.
Guys,
we need to talk about that.
Guys, come on, you're doctors. Have a French fry. There's
Thank you, sir.
riddled with trans fats. I just want the doctors to eat it. And remember, doctors say lucky strikes, too. What happens if, move from employers, what happens if the government comes in and says, gee, I'm sorry, we're going to, I mean, in Massachusetts, they have just passed a law where they have the right to come into your home. They have a right to search your premises, I believe. Isn't that right? Search your premises. It's pretty broad power here. And then either quarantine you at a place of their choosing, or you have to get the vaccination. They have a right to do that?
They absolutely do. When the courts look at this, they balance the two competing interests. And when you've got an issue where there's a health crisis and people can really get sick and hurt, they can do it. They balance the privacy interest in the person, the right to privacy in your body and to getting medical treatment.
I think Americans have a problem. This is my problem. Look, it's your choice to get it. We're not talking about, hey, you shouldn't drive fast on the street. We're talking about injecting something into my body. Now, if I don't have a right to my own body, what right do I have?
Well, you don't have to get the vaccine. Your other choice is to go into quarantine if it's one being required by the state.
I'm sure that will be pleasant. No, seriously, that'd be.
Or if you've got a job and you're an at-will employee, you've got the right to be terminated. I mean, most employers aren't going to do that. Most employers aren't going to require their whole workforce. It's only in the healthcare industry where that happens.
Sure. And I understand that. I mean, you can't imagine forcing your employees to get the vaccination, unless you are an emergency or you're working with sick people or whatever. I can understand that. Again, I think the idea that, okay, sure, I don't have to get the vaccine, but does the government have any responsibility on how they're taking care of me when I'm in that quarantine zone?
I mean, think about this, Glenn. When you send your children to school, they make them have certain vaccines or they can't go to school. The only exception to that is if you have a sincerely held religious belief.
There's a difference, though, between that and then being sent off to some quarantine zone. Do you have any right? How do you know when that's up? Do we know any of that? Has this ever been done?
I think this is pretty untested. You know, we've had different things over the years where the government has attempted to put certain groups of people into certain places, and it's gotten them into big trouble.
Yeah.
You know,
it usually doesn't work out real well. You have to ask the questions. You have to do your own homework, and then you have to decide. Anyone who gets on television says, "Oh, you've got to take this," or "You should never take this." I mean, they're not just not an expert. I think they're a fool. This one is important. A pandemic is only a matter of time. But it's getting harder and harder to tell what is true anymore. The media has betrayed us. It seems everybody has. There are people now on the internet talking about all kinds of things, and they are dangerous. Some of them are true, some of them are not. Some of them get millions of views and web hits.
The chemical companies make money on the sale of the vaccination. So when they chart out what dosage to use, they're charting it about a profit. They know what lethal dose, how much they give you to kill you. Then they cut down, and they know active dose. They don't always quite know about active dose. But we need to start looking at much more safer types of vaccination. Here we have a man from Al Jazeera News who's even talking about that.
But hopefully, depending the strength of the vaccine, and it could be that the use of new adjuvant technology makes the vaccine more effective at a lower dose. This would mean that the companies would maybe be able to triple or even quadruple their production of vaccine, given that this will be a single vaccine given alongside the seasonal flu vaccine.
Now, what we just heard him say now is the fact that really they're starting to think about this now. What are safer doses of vaccination? Vaccination is a safe, natural, homeopathic process. We need to reduce the dangers by using it in a safer fashion. And it's hard to trust those chemical companies because they really are so profit motivated. So we need to have some other people from the natural world to help them. I'd be happy to volunteer my services. Now, one of the first things we have to do is looking at prevention. What I saw there in Mexico is I went through the Mexican airport and everybody had on masks. When I came back through the Mexican airport about 2 weeks later, everybody was in masks. They were trying to contain the virus. Now, Mexico had lost lots of money because the hotels were all shutting down. We can see the news report.
Yeah, you're right. You know, Mexico has been hit with that triple whammy, and as a result, these breathtaking views and even the crystal clear waters over my shoulder here just aren't enough to entice and convince people to come visit those Mexican resorts. Take a look at this video here. One business owner tells me that sales are down 75% from last year's numbers. Foot traffic in the local markets are nowhere near what you typically see this time of year. The restaurants are virtually empty, and the tourists who are here have noticed.
Great value. Right? There's nobody here. There's no lines. There's no fighting to get places and all that stuff. But, you know, the other side of it is I think, you know, these folks here depend on us to make their living, and so that's got to be a little bit nervous for them.
It is tough. Every resort here in Cabo has experienced layoffs. Some have reduced their staffs by 25%. And it's not just a Cabo problem. Resorts in Cancun, Acapulco, and others are dealing with the same dilemma. They're all offering great deals right now to get people in the door. Incentives include free rooms and resort credits to spend at hotel bars and restaurants. So if Mexico is on your to-do list or your must-see list, Megan, now may be the time to visit.
You could see Mexico was really in a quandary. And they had to ask for money to help them. And I was there, and I went back to Mexico again the next month. And all of a sudden, things were okay. Now, where's the big problems? Big problems are in England.
There could be 100,000 new swine flu cases a day in the UK by the end of August. The government says trying to contain the virus is no longer an option. Andy Burnham told Parliament Britain had to prepare for the worst-case scenario.
There are now, on average, several hundred new cases every day. This creates challenges on the ground and pressure on services. We have always known it will be impossible to contain the virus indefinitely, and that at some point we would need to move away from containment to treating the increasing numbers falling ill.
In the poor countries, we're at a spot now, and when I'm making this tape, this is July 2009, we're at a spot now where this virus is really taken off, and it's not really containable. We want to try to help prevent ourselves and our children from being exposed, and we have to worry about these things. One of the things we need is a little thing called First Defense. Products like this that can help us when we are first exposed, and we've been into a place, went to a movie theater, somebody had a cough and a cold. We should have these things ready to be able to shoot into our nose. These viruses mostly work through hand-touch contact. Some of them are airborne, and some when they sneeze, they can be carried. And some of them can be carried for a long time. We hope that these viruses don't evolve into complete airborne, even in dry situations. Most of the time that they're in what we call the little dropules, the little, these little tabloids, the little things that pop out of our mouths, these spit factors that pop out. These can be contagious and can carry a virus. Once it lands into the skin, gets into the nose, it's going to seek out and start to proliferate. It's going to penetrate into those easily penetrating tissues of the membranes, and it's going to start to proliferate. Then what does the body do? These viruses can be deactivated by sunlight. They can be deactivated by detergent. So there's ways that we can help to prevent ourselves. And it's not a problem to put a mask on if you're going someplace where you know that this virus is. Rather wear a mask than have to spend those 2 weeks at home. But still, it can be really difficult. And as our bodies and as our societies start to develop, what are we going to see? We're going to see that these viruses go out, but there are still certain people who just won't get them. It will not affect everybody. We've not seen a virus yet that's ever affected everybody. That's a possibility. And what we saw, this massive scare that happened with this swine flu, this massive scare, was actually kind of a drill. Now, this virus hasn't killed that many people. Today, as of today, estimates are about 700. 500,000 people die of flu viruses every year. 500,000. Over 45,000 in America alone, where the deaths are directly attributed or secondarily attributable to flu virus. Nowhere near what's killing people by cigarettes. Cigarettes are the #1 killer. Synthetic drugs are killing a lot more. But the flu virus is killing 500,000 people worldwide. So when we come to the H1N1 virus and it kills 700, we start to think, what's really happening here? That is a type of virus, much like the Spanish flu virus, which back in the 1920s killed over 25 to 30 million people. One of the most horrendous problems that we've ever seen in the history of the planet. So this virus has to be considered. What can happen? And just what happened back there in 1928? Back then, didn't have an awful lot of sewage. Sewage was really just being developed. Our friend Dr. Snow had done his work with cholera back in the 1800s and found out that about water and sewage. And the City of London was working on sewage and etc. And many places in the world had just not really caught on. So that was one of the major problems that with the deaths that happened. You see, because this virus created damage in the cells, and the damage in the cells started to weaken the immune system further and left it open for some secondary infections, bacteria and the like. In the Spanish flu virus, it is mostly attributed that these people died of what we call a cytokine storm, where the inflammatory products of the body made by these viruses were killing people. The body internal, its reaction, its immune system, created these problems. And one of the things it did is it made hemorrhages, made them bleed. And this virus would get deep into the lungs and they would start to bleed. Lungs would fill up. That's why people died. We're going to have to do something about these hemorrhages when we start talking about what to do. Because this is the danger. What if a major virus came out there that affected a lot more? We're looking at a swine flu, which will probably end up in some way hitting probably 2 out of 3 people. Some people might not even know it and just catch it and work through it. They have good immune systems. 1 person out of 3 won't even get it at all. His immune system completely rejects it. And 1 person out of 3 will get it pretty bad. And there will be people who will die. What makes them die is going to be largely dependent about what they do and who they are when they get it. The danger of this new virus that hit Mexico is all of a sudden some kids were dying that really just don't die from flu. That's why all the red buttons, all the red flags went up and all the red buttons went off and the buzzers and everything. What are we really dealing with? What we're dealing with now has been called a pandemic. When a virus by itself starts to threaten more than 100,000 people and spreading around the world, it's called pandemic. And now this H1N1 is pandemic. But what do we need to do? Well, first off, as we start talking about intake, we want to be able to look at the foods that will fortify the immune system and directly help us to resist influenza and other flu viruses. First off, fatty acids. One of the reasons why we see very little of this in places like Italy, where they take olive oil before a meal, put it into a little saucer and dip their bread into it. They put olive oil onto their salads, and salads are a big part of their meal every day. Other places more sensitive are places where they don't serve salads, and they don't use olive oil. Olive oil is a very good, not only preventative, but an early course of treatment. Because if we get good fatty acids into the body, not in extremely large amounts, don't take a bottle and gug them, just a nice little bit of bread dipped into the olive oil, give us a little kick of fatty acids. That little kick of fatty acids will help the cells to stabilize their membrane, and less viruses will be replicated. Not just olive oil, but all the different oils, sesame seeds, soybeans, safflower, sunflower. Rotating these oils and getting a blend of them is very good. A formula which I like to use is the Dr. Nelson salad oil. The Dr. Nelson salad oil is designed to supply all the different fatty acids you need. And you just put this on the salad every day. Put it in some bread. You can make the Dr. Nelson better butter. By mixing the oil with butter and or margarine, and then keeping it cold, you can still get that effect, and you get that wonderful taste, and yet you're getting a good hunk of those fatty acids. There are many other different compounds on the shelf that can do this, but I've designed some that you could make simply, easily at home by blending in butter, the Dr. Nelson Better Butter. Another thing that we have to worry about, good sugars, not bad sugars. Now, this is one of the big problems, because when we look at flu season, what happens at flu season? A lot of different things. Primarily, it's always after a sugar holiday. Halloween, Christmas, Valentine's Day. A so-called sugar holiday. And what does this sugar do? Well, white processed dextrose, the sugar that revolves to the right, that white processed dextrose that makes light bend to the right, is too pure a fuel, and it goes into the body and weakens the immune system. That white processed sugar, dextrose, is a immunosuppressant. You see, these white processed dextrose go into the cells too quickly, because the blood sugar that goes into our cells is already a dextrose. When we take in dextrose, it goes in too fast. And the dextrose are made from corn, potato, the cane sugar, grape, many of the different wheat, the different other seed products. These will make a dextrose which will go into the cells too quickly. Now, we have fructose, which is fruit sugar. It's also known as levulose because it makes light revolve to the left. Now, what that does is that the body will have to take the levulose and convert it into a dextrose, and that slow conversion means it will not go fast into the cells, and it becomes an immunobuilder. It stimulates the immune system. It's an immunostimulator. Levulose, fructose, fruits, fruit sugar. You don't have to do without sweets, but you must get them from fruit, not from the candy bar. You must find the type of fructose. Fructose is an immunostimulator. Dextrose is an immunosuppressant. So we need to worry about getting good sugars, not bad sugars. We need to be able to stabilize many different things. One of the other things we need to stabilize is the basic value of getting enough calcium. Calcium helps fortify the membranes to make it harder to get in. We have to get good potassium, and we have to decrease sodium. Sodium is an ion inside the liquids. It's an extracellular ion, whereas potassium is an intercellular ion. We need to get good potassium to help us fight. And potassium will come from foods that are orange. Potassium will tend to make food orange. So we're going to see more potassium in paprika, orange, pumpkin, squash. We need to put a little more paprika into the diet to help get some potassium. We don't need an awful lot, but our body should have twice as much potassium than sodium. And right now, many people are getting so much sodium, and they're getting too much, and that's upsetting the balance, and it upsets the balance of the immune system as well. The white blood cells are part of that, and if the white blood cells are overactively pumping sodium out of the cells, what is known as the sodium pump, it's taking energy away from the body, thereby there's less energy for the immune system. So when we don't get enough natural potassium, natural calcium, and we get too much sodium, that also is an immunosuppressant. More vegetables, more juices, more orange juice. As this virus starts to proliferate, the body will take this virus into its lymphoid tissues. Lymphoid tissues such as the tonsils, the adenoids, the appendix. It will take them into these lymph tissues and hold it there as the lymphatics, which hold so much of the white blood cells. These areas will now generate new white blood cells, focus on this area, and generate antibodies. That's what the tonsils and the adenoids and the appendix are for. They're part of the immune system we have against virus. Being the immune system for virus, they're going to hold the virus and let those white blood cells, let the reticuloendothelial, the immune system, let it build antibodies. Antibodies are what's going to defeat the virus, which is why we don't die from these viruses. The virus don't just keep proliferating. These areas would do it. Now, when you get virus as a kid, and your adenoids will swell because they're holding that virus. They're working to make antibodies. The virus is inside contacting parts of the tonsils and making swelling. That's what the virus does. It goes inside the cell, uses the DNA, replicates and explodes and comes out with more. This produces a cascade. That's why we get the tonsillitis and the adenoids. They're not the problem, and we're taking them out, and that's called butchery. They're part of the process. We should try to keep those tissues. Inside that lymph area, these are called lymphoid cells, the adenoids, tonsils, and appendix, is the key part of our beta response, which is antibody response. In this area, what we're going to find is echinacea creates lymphatic acceleration or lymphatic spinning. That's the beneficial effects of echinacea. When you take in echinacea, the lymph in the body will spin faster and faster and move faster. The normal lymph of the body, and the lymph doesn't really have a heart pump. There's a place here at the sacrum where when you move, it gives a little gentle push. And people who just lay, and the people who lay in the bed all the time in the hospitals, etc., they don't get the lymphatics to drain. As part of the problem, which is why it's so deadly to get these viruses in the hospitals. You're not getting circulation. People who are inactive are not getting lymphatic circulation. That's another major risk problem that we have. You see, lymphatics have to move. And it's the movement of the lymph which will circulate the antibodies once the antibodies are made in these areas. These areas are not the enemy. We don't want to take out the tonsils. If we do, we will set up a situation where that person will not be able to deal with viruses in the future. He will not have the antibody production. And that is the person who is more sensitive and more likely to die. So we need those areas and we want to protect them. Echinacea makes the lymph move faster. It accelerates. It should take about 24 hours for that lymph to move through the body. Take a little echinacea and it moves faster. That's why echinacea works so good in the beginning of the exposure, because it starts to really make those antibodies work better and get more prolific. That's the benefits. When you're taking the echinacea later on, it can have some benefits. But most of the benefits of the echinacea are at the early exposure to really get that connection and get that lymph spinning. That's the benefits of echinacea. Another factor which we found is that of the probiotics. Things like Actimel, Activia, a host of other different things. These have good bacteria in the bowel, which will fight the bad bacteria, but also will benefit and help push the immune system. Probiotics. If you have good probiotics in your bowel and you have good fatty acids, you're going to be really so much more resistant to any type of influenza. If you're getting good sugars, not bad sugars, good oils, good fatty acids, not bad oils, bad fatty acids. If you're getting these things, you're going to have a much better immune system, be able to resist or tolerate a flu virus much easier. It's the people who don't to really get the problems. Another factor we find is a thing called fluoroquinones. Fluoro because they fluoresce, quinones because they're type of quinine. We know that quinine, if you've ever been to a bar and get a quinine drink in an ultraviolet club, you're going to see that the quinine fluoresces. Fluoroquinones. We have found that these are very, very helpful in the treatment of colds. So tonic water, quinine, it's very helpful. And it's called tonic because it was used many times, and we found it was a tonic not only for malaria, it was also a tonic for flu. That's why it's called the tonic. And getting that type of tonic can be very, very helpful. We've seen a lot of press coming out here about Tamiflu. And Tamiflu really was made by a synthetic derivative of some of the products that are inside anise seed.
Tamiflu is fairly effective at treating the H1N1 infection. A possible shortage in the availability of Tamiflu and an opportunity to capitalize on the swine flu scare has pushed many countries to look for cheaper generic alternatives. Anti-flu is one such example, produced by an Indian company. It was approved by the WHO in May. It has been certified to be as effective as Tamiflu and is included in the WHO list of pre-qualified medicinal products. Meanwhile, Vietnam is also looking into the possibility of making a key material required for the production of Tamiflu out of anissae, a small tree grown locally.
Getting a good anise seed tea, that licorice type taste of tea, can be very helpful. For an adult, a little bit of ouzo with tonic, very helpful. A little bit of alcohol for an adult can help relax the cells, because another thing that we need is stress reduction. The two parts of the immune system are the sympathetic or stress side, the fight side we call it. Then the other side is the relaxation side, or the sympathetic. The parasympathetic side is about digestion and immunity. The sympathetic side is about the adrenaline and the fight or flight. We have the other side, immunity. How we are going to make immunities, how we're going to make our white blood cells to defeat this virus that we've just been exposed to, will be boosted if we can get deep muscle relaxation. Deep, deep muscle relaxation. If we can relax the muscles deeply, 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 to let the blood flow through the different areas, we would dramatically increase. This is why everybody is prescribed bed rest. Get the parasympathetic nervous system to work. The parasympathetic nervous system will build up immunity. Make sure we're getting some good foods, not overdosing. Let the body choose what it wants. If the body's not hungry, don't overfeed it. But stay away from the bad sugars and the bad oils. Good sugars, good oils. This is what we need to do. You see, this is what they're saying on Euronews. What to do. One of the things is, don't panic. You get the flu. It's a natural process. Many, many people get this. We're trying to discuss some natural ways to deal with it, 1,000 times more effective than what the medical doctors can do for you. The reason you go to the medical doctor is because you're afraid. Your son's got a little sniffle. You're afraid it might be some other involvement. Let me try to help you, because when you run off to the doctor's office, not only are you bringing a virus where there's sick people that could kill them, there are other people with other viruses where your child might have an allergy and you're bringing him to be in contact with the virus. And the real truth is the medical doctor is not well prepared to help you. He is going to be wondering about what drug to give you, and he oftentimes will prescribe you an antibiotic for secondary infections you don't have. Thereby, as we all know, antibiotics make the immune system weaker. Antibiotics are immunosuppressants, and they create more problems, not less. Tamiflu and these other things are just not as good as some of the actual natural products that you can get right off the shelf. Absolutely undeniable. You have a choice whether you want to choose synthetic or whether you want to choose natural. And we find that more and more intelligent people, and the more intelligent you are, the more you're likely to choose natural. Because as a society, we've all rejected synthetic foods, because we know that they're not compatible, that they create disease, that it was just a ploy with chemical companies to try to make money. And the big experiment of the synthetic, it's failed. The natural progression of the intelligent mind would be to understand synthetic medications are also incompatible. They are designed for symptomatic control, and many of them are designed for dependence, get you hooked on them. They're not really designed for cure. So what to do? So here I am, Desiree Dubonnet. I'm going to teach you a little bit of something in the kitchen for flu. Little thing that a friend of mine calls the goddess formula. That's not a bad name. Let me get an extra spoon. I'm going to work with a big, giant tablespoon, but you actually need to take a teaspoon. And we're going to take turmeric. Touch of some paprika. Use about a teaspoon of the turmeric. Touch of paprika. Little touch of curry. Already put the curry in there. Making a little bit of a type of a formula for the first signs of cold and flu. Now what I have here is a fructose honey. We've taken a nice honey, but it's a honey that has a little extra fructose, sugar. The sugar that's in honey is a glucose, and it's a dextrose. Now the honey has some more nutrition in it. It has some minerals, that's why it's brown color. We use this type of fructose honey because we want to not just get the glucose, we want to get the levulose of the fructose. Now we're going to put a nice big, we're going to use 2 of these little teaspoons into this honey formula. Try to keep the honey spoons separate. Mix it up with the turmeric, paprika, touch of the cayenne. What we have now is this little goddess syrup. I've made a quantity for about 2 people, because what you want to take is about half of a big spoon. That and actually pretty good. The turmeric and the curry have a very nice combination that have anti-aging properties. They have immune stimulating properties. They have many, many effects on the human body. During cold and flu season, a little dose of this in the morning for the children, and it helps in many, many ways. It's also been found that this, with a little extra curry, can be a preventative and also an early treatment for Alzheimer's. It can prevent Alzheimer's as well as help to treat it in its early stage. And what we have here now is a nice little formula for the colds and flu that we made called the goddess formula. What I have here is the sambucol. This is the Hungarian style of it. And this is the sambucol, which has the elderberry in it. It's very important for all of health, especially immune system and viral defense and immunity, to balance the bowel flora. We have lots of videos on this. Bone broth soup, excellent in the beginning to help build those antibodies. Then here's a list of all the different herbs that have had scientific proof about how they help with viruses. Don't discount vitamin C. Vitamin C is known to help any type of virus. You can use this all the time. And then if we use a little bit of the anise, star anise, with quinine tonic water, very, very powerful. Golden seal herb, very, very powerful. You can get this from Only Nature Knows. Along with the olive leaf, very, very good for the coronavirus. And in the very, very beginning, another excellent formula is the sambucol. This is the sambuca, which is a scientific name for elderberry. This type of elderberry is very, very powerful, only to be used in the beginning because it helps to build the cytokines. Once you're in a cytokine storm, this is bad stuff, and you should not use the bone broth or the sambuca if there's a cytokine storm. If you're nearing death, please don't use that. Always remember that you can use the vitamin C, you can use the tonic water and ouzo. You could use those type of things. You could use those different herbs. They can be used during the entire course, but stay away from the sambuca and the bone broth. At the very end, they can intensify a cytokine storm. It's a cytokine storm that hurts people. Now we're going to study a little bit more about what to do for virus and to stimulate our immunity for flu, coronavirus, and the host, all the other things. Watch now. When you're really, really sick, this is where you belong. Bed. There's all kinds of germs floating around. Research has shown one candle, one scented oiled candle, like this, or like this, with essential oil scents, one such candle can clean bacteria out of the air of a 10-foot by 10-foot room. Amazing. You might need a couple of these, but just a little bit of this scent. It will circulate and help kill things in the air. People have always taught about taking an onion, putting an onion in a sock and putting it in underneath the covers of the bed, underneath the pillow if you're really sick. Putting onion slices in some of the bedclothes, because this also can help to kill those little bacteria, fungus, and especially viruses that are spreading. When you're in that crisis state, you want to try to relax. Remember, as we talked about the parasympathetic nervous system. The parasympathetic nervous system of the body is that controls the immunity. The parasympathetic system, differing from the sympathetic system, our active system. And we need to stimulate the immunity and also try to keep the adrenals. The adrenals are the sympathetic nervous system. We need to keep the adrenals going. The number one anti-inflammatory of the body is adrenaline. So when you get into a really bad asthma or a really bad attack, if you're in the hospital, one of the things that they use is a shot of adrenaline. Little adrenal tap. Now the adrenals are on the top of the kidney. Right in here. Let's turn over here. So over here in my low back, here's the adrenals. I have two of them. And on the top of the kidney are the two adrenal glands. A little nice tap. The adrenal tap. Just a nice light tap. A little bit of a massage. A hard blow can really hurt, so we don't want to do it hard. Nice little tap, massage to help to stimulate natural adrenaline. Natural adrenaline can help to wake you up, help to keep you going, and help to really fight the inflammation if you're in that really bad spot. The place for the defense of the bacteria, the fungus, and cancers is mostly through the thymus, which regulates T cells of the immune system. T cells being white blood cells circulating through the lymph to attack bacteria, fungus, and cancers. And to help with those, we do a little thymus tap. Thymus gland is here. When you're born, the thymus gland is one of the largest glands in the entire body. And it doesn't change size. Your body actually grows up around it. It's a different type of tissue. Just a slight little thymus tap. 30 seconds to a minute, no more. Can help to generate that thymosin. It's a hormone that helps turn on the T cells and helps the body. So remember the adrenal tap, the thymus tap, the carotid sinus tap. We reach up to the top of the Adam's apple, if you have one, in this area, reaching back till we feel the blood flow. At this point in the neck, where the blood flows, and we feel it with both fingers, is the carotid sinus, a group of muscles and nerves that help to regulate the blood flow through the carotid artery into the brain. This is the spot of the body that is sensitive most to barometric pressure. In other words, changes in the air pressure when a cold front moves in. If anything in your body, any type of symptom is responsive and you can feel it when the weather changes, it's because your carotid sinuses are involved. Maybe because they're out of whack. If you hold up here and you feel that there's more blood flowing on one side than the other, tap on the weak side 10 times, then tap on both sides 10 times to wake up the carotid sinus, to wake up the carotid, and to help to get the blood flow properly balanced back to the brain. This is another exercise that we do. Another one is the alternate nostril breathing. We breathe in, hold, breathe out. In, hold, out. In, hold, out. Gradually increasing the amount of seconds until we can do 5 seconds on each intake and exhale. Helping to stimulate the different parts of the brain. This is the one part of the brain that is not contralateral, but ipsilateral. And by doing alternate nostril breathing, we can help to wake up the connections to the brain through the olfactory nervous system. It's very important to try to keep oxygen moving in a cold. When that happens, sometimes we have to resort to different medicines like Sudafed, which has ephedra in it. Really good stuff, but they found they had to take it off the market because it was too easily made into drugs. One of my favorites to use during a cold is the nasal sprays, the type of spray that helps to open up the nose. Because it's very important to keep oxygen flowing as best as we possibly can. Try to use menthol, try to use eucalyptus rubs to try to keep that movement. Now, the parasympathetic nervous system is one that is built for deep relaxation, but the parasympathetic nervous system is also controlled and is also referred to as the craniosacral nervous system. It is the opposing ends of the spine. Turn here. The opposing ends of the spine that are involved in the craniosacral area. Light pressure on the eyes, light pressure, like maybe a wet, hot, damp face cloth onto the eyes, that little light pressure helps to turn on the parasympathetic nervous system. The gag response, which is also one of the reasons why we cough, helps to turn on the parasympathetic nervous system. Touching just in front of the anus, here at the very, very bottom. Touching down here in front of the anus at the very, very bottom. A little light pressure on that spot also helps to turn on the system, turn on the parasympathetic nervous system. Which is why defecation, when we defecate, that actually is a slight turn on to our parasympathetic nervous system. We want to make sure we get lots of fluids, lots of rest, deep relaxation. Try to keep the room as clean as pathogens as possible. Try to clean out all the different pathogens. But as we are really getting into a danger spot, we get that cytokine storm. Sometimes we need to do something extra. And in drastic cases, sometimes the best thing is to go outdoors. Believe it or not, fresh air, strong stimulant to the immune system. Getting outside. Sunshine, if you can get it, of course, during the winter time. We don't always get an awful lot of sunshine. But a little bit of sunshine, a little bit of fresh air, as fresh as possible. Nostradamus was made famous when he found that people were really sick from the plague because they stayed in their houses too much. They didn't get out. And when he got them out, as sick as they were, many of them recovered. Now, we're not talking about going out and playing. We're talking about going out for a short time. Maybe just a couple of minutes, 10, 15 minutes. Maybe as most an hour. But just to try to get some type of little extra clean air, sunshine, outside, connection, stimulate the skin. This can really be a stimulant to the immune system and to help to get you out of that cold and flu and the danger spot of the cytokine storm. Remember our old friends, onions, garlic? Very important to mash up the garlic. That activates the healing agents as well as in the onion. One of the reasons why we cry. I found very interesting that in tears, there is an antivirus capacity in tears. We talked about how there's an antivirus capacity in earwax. It's the strongest antiviral component we know. There's also an antiviral capacity in tears. Don't be afraid to cry, because it's a preventative of cold and flu and different virals. And chopping up onions can be good for you. A little cry, because it helps to proceed. And you can make yourself a nice little soup and add thymol and some turmeric, some cayenne, some different types of things, mustard. You have to make it strong to help clean out. Clean out the different bacteria, the fungus, and very important to clean out all the different worms that also get involved. In my Sexual Warrior book, the Sexual Warrior Witch book, I tried to show how there are certain things that we need to do in medicine at home. That food is our best medicine, and also what to do and how to have our own little pharmacy and how to treat our family and friends. There's certain little things that I tried to show in this book, some little secrets. Now let's talk about virus. Let's talk about vaccination and immunization. Vaccination is the word that Jenner proposed, because remember he worked with cows, milkmaids. And vaxa is from the Latin cow. That's where vaccination comes from. So it's really kind of an inappropriate term. Now when he was doing this work, he was working with skin lesions. And they would be doing the scratch, skin lesions. So it was a vaccination, which was scratch for skin immunity. With viruses, our really number one exposure to virus is through the nasal pharynx. We shake hands with somebody, we pick up something, and all of a sudden we touch our nose, rub our eyes. That virus now gets there and gets started, which is why I have our adenoids and our tonsils, which capture those viruses and start to make antibodies. As they make antibodies, it takes lots of white blood cells to do this. And the tissues of the thymus and the adenoids, these lymphoid tissues, start to swell. If the virus escapes into the digestive tract, it can find its way down to the pyruvate patches in the small intestine and the appendix, which are also lymphoid tissues of the B cell army, which help to neutralize viruses and allergy. Now it's very, very important we talk about allergy. Allergy also works on antibodies. So when you have a cold and flu, any type of allergies that you're exposed to will aggravate the cold and flu. When we were in the bedroom, one of the things I should have pointed out, I forgot, is that how inside the bed there are little mites, bed mites, that live off human skin. These little tiny, 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 tiny little insects. Their defecation, many people get allergic to. As you sit in your bed and you get exposed to these over and over again, and you've been sick, and you're lying in bed for days, many other things happen and you can get allergic. Flu is 3 days onset, 3 days you have, 3 days recovery. If it goes past that, it's because the allergies are aggravating, or secondary conditions of weakened immune system are bringing in bacteria and fungus, prolonging your agony. So we need to work with all these different things and recognize that good cleaning of the bed, get outside, rest, and let somebody clean your bed, clean the bedroom, try to neutralize, sometimes even going someplace else to help get rid of any exposure of anything that might be allergic or might be toxic or accumulative of bacteria, fungus, and different viruses. A no-sode in homeopathy is using diseased or disease-causing tissue in dilute form to treat the patient. Let's look at the history of this.
Sometimes quite hard to look back in history and find the origins of particular medical procedures. But there is evidence for the ancient Chinese practice of variolation using dried smallpox scabs blown into the nose. This produced a milder form of the disease. These individuals were subsequently protected from smallpox. By 1700, variolation had been adopted in India, the Ottoman Empire, and Africa.
This no-sode did work, and they tried it on many different diseases, and it worked on many diseases, and some not so well. Let's look more into the history.
Historians have found that the origin of vaccines goes back to ancient Asia and Africa. Early versions of what are now called vaccines are believed to have been discovered in response to a deadly disease known as smallpox, which was widespread across many cultures and countries and affected rich and poor people equally.
I do not know why she's compelled to draw a syringe when they did not use a syringe to administer variolation.
Fortunately, vaccine-like treatments were developed to protect people against this sickness. In Asia, a technique known as variolation was used, involving a person being purposefully infected with smallpox by placing pus from a smallpox sore under their skin. This caused a milder disease than a full smallpox infection and resulted in the person gaining lifelong immunity.
Yeah, there's another syringe, even though they weren't using a syringe to administer this product. They put it into the nasal pharynx.
While widely practiced in Asia and Africa, this was viewed with skepticism by European physicians, and smallpox killed approximately 400,000 Europeans a year in the 18th century.
The no-sodal work with the variolation into the nasal pharynx was working around the world very successfully, but
in 1796, Edward Jenner, an English doctor, demonstrated that cowpox virus treatment could also prevent smallpox disease. This works because the two viruses look very similar to the human immune system, though Jenner did not know that at the time. Jenner injected an 8-year-old boy with pus he had taken from a cowpox sore on the hand of a milkmaid. The little boy had a mild illness, not at all dangerous like smallpox, and he recovered quickly. When Jenner later deliberately exposed the boy to smallpox, he didn't get sick. His immune system was trained to fight off smallpox infection because of his prior exposure to cowpox. A fun fact, Jenner created the word vaccine from the Latin word vacca, which means cow, and vaccinia, which is Latin for cowpox.
even though they didn't use a syringe, they used the nasal pharynx, variolation was successful around the world.
Smallpox was a major global endemic disease. Only in Europe, it killed around 400,000 people per year. It didn't differentiate between rich and poor. Even 5 kings were killed. But for some reason, milkmaids and shepherdesses seemed to be immune to the disease. In fact, they were renowned for their beauty because their skins were free of the scars smallpox caused. They were attractive and resistant. But why? That's what the rural doctor Edward Jenner was trying to understand. He knew that milkmaids got small blisters on their hands when they milked cows suffering from cowpox, a mild disease that cattle suffered from, which caused similar lesions to smallpox. And this phenomenon made Jenner think that maybe cowpox and smallpox were related.
Jenner was a homeopath. He was practicing homeopathy, and he knew the principle of homeopathy is that like treats like. So the symptoms that look like one, he would use to treat the other, because like treats like. He was a homeopath, using a no-sode.
And that infection with the milder disease would be enough to protect people against the lethal one. As a man of science, he decided to prove it. And to do this, he needed 3 things. Cowpox that he extracted from a milkmaid, fresh smallpox from a patient, and a human guinea pig. He he chose his gardener's son, an 8-year-old boy called James Phipps. He infected the child with cowpox, waited a couple of months, and injected him with smallpox. And James didn't become ill. He repeated the experiment with other patients with the same results. Jenner was right, even though he didn't fully understand how his remedy worked. The most remarkable thing was that his discoveries were made way before Jacob Henle proposed in 1840 that infectious diseases were caused by germs, a theory demonstrated by Robert Koch. Decades later, Louis Pasteur, inspired by Jenner's experiments, showed that attenuated microbes could be used to prevent diseases, and he proposed the terminus vaccine in his honor. Almost 200 years after Jenner's experiments, and thanks to global vaccination campaigns, in 1980, the World Health Organization announced one of humanity's biggest achievements: the complete eradication of smallpox, the most deadly infectious disease in history.
Jenner was a homeopath. He had no idea about the microorganisms. He only knew that you use diseased tissue or disease-causing tissue in dilute form to treat the patient, and that symptoms were like treating like. Now let's look at how we could use homeopathy in today's world. Immunization now is the idea of taking the natural entity, which is what they do when they try to make a vaccination and an immunization. They're going to take the new swine flu, H1N1. They put it into an egg, into a horse, into something. Eggs are the most popular thing now because they don't kick as much. They put them into eggs and they grow the virus. Then they kill the virus with an agent. Sometimes it's a mercury agent. They use a thimerosal, those thymosin, etc. That agent, then they try to pull out, and they're not always capable of getting it all out. They use a lead acetate, ethyl acetate, those type of things. And they hope that by the time they give you that vaccination, that they've gotten rid of all those things. They hope that they've killed all the different agents. Remember the risks. When they inject the mercury with it in a large quantity in an unnatural place, flu viruses are not naturally exposed under the skin. Their natural agent is up here to build immunity through the adenoids and tonsils, not through the humoral system. So since they're doing it unnaturally, it increases the risk of side effects. And their statistics is 1 out of 10,000 people get autism, learning disabilities, nerval damage. Other people say 1 out of 1,000. But we know that 1 out of 100 will get some side effect. 1 out of 1,000 or so, somewhere in there between 1,000 and 10,000 will get debilitating, life-changing side effects. Safety is often thrown out the window, and I'd like to point you to my video and the book on effectiveness medicine versus natural medicine, so you can understand the difference in those 2 points. But what I want to do now is the sexual warrior witch. Teach you how to make a virus immunization at home. It's simple. It's easy. It's using the principles of homeopathy and using the principles of immunization that the chemical companies use. First thing we need to do is find a person with the virus, whether it's SARS or whatever. And we try to find this, and this is what happens in the early outbreak. Now, we don't want to get exposed to it. But what we need to do is get a sample of the mucus. We got our sample. And if I had a really bad flu and that little bit of slime, mucus, snot, whatever you want to call it, it's not what you think. If you get that into a bottle, and this is a nice little 2-ounce bottle. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10. 10 drops. We have lots of viruses in there. Active viruses at first. To kill those viruses, we're going to use a vodka. My favorite, Finlandia. My mother and family was from Finland. We're going to put ourselves about half of that bottle with the vodka. Now this particular vodka, being 40% alcohol, fairly strong, and I like to use the vodka because vodka is a rather pure alcohol, very little impurities. In Finlandia, it has one of the fewest. We have ourselves the alcohol, and the alcohol will now have killed those viruses. Just to make sure, we're going to cap it, and we're going to leave this formula for 24 hours, just to make sure. We want to do the homeopathic preparation of succussing, which is like such. Smacking it on a Bible or your hand for 15 to 20 times. This will help to impart the energy. It also helps to make sure that there is no virus left. Okay, now let's assume 24 hours is over. We can now use water. And we now put water, distilled water, RO water, water with few impurities. We have our formula. This one has a little homeopathic dosing, and we put it on the cap. We succuss it again. Samuel Hahnemann developed wrist disturbances from repetitive motion, repetitive movement disease, because he made so many homeopathics. We now have approximately, in this bottle there are approximately about 250 drops. An ounce has about 120 drops. So we got probably a little over a 2 ounce bottle, I would think, and we got ourselves approximately 250, let's say, drops. We put 10 of the original into it. The original mother tincture, what we call the virus, the original virus, all those different viruses. We've now diluted it by over 10 times, approximately about 10x or so, from the original. Yes, there is mucus in here. Yes, there is other crap. I'm sorry about that. We have to live with it. It has been sterilized by the vodka, left overnight. Now we have ourselves approximately a 20% solution. A solution that viruses cannot grow in, a solution bacteria cannot grow in, a solution that fungus cannot grow in. But these virus components have been neutralized. Now, to prescribe them to our patients, we only need to use an eyedropper or such, and to take 4 drops under the tongue or on the tongue twice a day, 8 drops a day, for 3 days. And what we are getting is actual virus. Every drop will have some virus in it. Dead virus. But that virus will help to get into the adenoids, tonsils, and trigger replication to make immunity through the natural process of using the nasopharynx rather than using skin touch, etc. And research has now shown that this is the safest way of making a type of vaccination, immunization. It's better called immunization. Vaccination applied to cow and scratching. An immunization type formula that can be made at home. Since those 8 drops a day over 3 days constitutes 24 drops, and there's 250 some odd drops, we probably have enough for 10 people to make an immunization formula. Safe, natural. Because if you were to be exposed to somebody's hand, chances are you would be picking up just 1 or 2 viruses that would be active and getting transferred. The fact that we are getting a larger dose, but these have been deactivated by the vodka. Make sure that vodka is strong. Make sure that exposure is continued for at least 24 hours, succussed regularly during the 24 hours, and you now have yourself a safe homemade immunization formula. Using nature, simple, easy, much more safe, much more effective than anything anybody else in the world can sell you. Your problems are when you get the original person who has the disease, he's infectious. And if you touch him, even in the same room as him, somebody can catch that disease. So how we catch that formula and how we get those very carefully and how we take them and put them into the first bottle, that's the trick. Keep in mind that if we're going to use this during cold and flu season, chances are during those 3 days you're probably going to get some exposure someplace else. But still, this can help to kick-start the antibody production faster. The antibody production can be kick-started with this faster to help get those antibodies made. Remember how echinacea helped because it helped to spin the lymph. Lymphatic massage, salt stimulates lymph movement. Lymphatic massage is also very important. We have used this process to make a natural immunization for the coronavirus. Now, I brought you this today to understand about no-sos, because in the future, we're going to need this cheap and effective treatment to be able to treat the wide variety of diseases that are going to be coming at us as we see the developments of the future. And there's one more thing I'd like to be able to share with you. Hot baths, water type therapy, very good, not only for help, relaxation. And what I found, one of the secrets, is to take a nice cheap bottle of wine. Doesn't matter whether it's red or white or rosé. A good cheap bottle of wine, don't pay over $3, into the bath water. That alcohol from the wine helps to get into the cells a little bit. Aloe has a kick of hydrogen peroxide. And if you get the normal hydrogen peroxide sold in stores, a nice little 1 ounce shot can give you the same type of hydrogen peroxide that's found in the water of Lourdes, which is known to be healing. Mustard powder into the bath. Garlic powder into the bath. Many different cold reliefs. Sea salts, eucalyptus, wintergreen. Very, very helpful to get into the bath. Taking good hot baths to help open up, get oxygen moving out, part of the process of stopping the inflammation. Taking real good care of yourself and your family, because care is really the key word in health. Care is the key word of wellness. Care for yourself, your children, your family, and try to find ways to naturally help, because running off to the doctor is a bad thing. That's where the diseases are. And your doctor is really mostly trained to give you synthetics or surgery. We want to use him. We don't want to throw away the doctor, but only in emergency cases. We want to try to get to helping ourselves much more naturally. Making health care a family thing, not a doctor thing. The doctors are for disease care. Health care is a family item. So I hope that I've touched your hearts in this video, and I hope you've learned a lot about virus and flu. There's many other parts of this as we get into the virus empire, the vaccination ideas, and all the other different videos that are attached to this. So I hope that you watch this and really learn how to take care of yourself and your family, especially in the case of any advanced flus. Desiree Dubonnet, signing off. When the Ebola virus first struck in that place in Africa, how deadly it was. But when you look at the story, you're going to see that they started using antibiotics in massive quantities. And the more antibiotics that they used, the faster people died. It is definitely known that antibiotics can aggravate many viral conditions. This is an absolute proof. Antibiotics can sedate the immune system and can aggravate a viral condition. But we want to make sure that we don't get those secondary infections. So we need to treat that. The hemorrhaging that we talked about, which was largely responsible for killing those people way back in the 1920s or so. That hemorrhaging was a cytokine cascade that got out of control. And what happens is these flu viruses kill cells. Now, the common cold does not kill so many cells. It creates some swelling, etc., and it doesn't really kill cells. With the influenza viruses, we're going to see massive cellular destruction. This is why when you're done with the real flu virus, you're weak. Your body's got to rebuild tissue. Where's that tissue rebuilt? Lung tissue, intestinal, nasal, tonsils, adenoids. You have to rebuild these areas. And if you're rebuilding them with bad nutrition, in other words, if what you've eaten has been bad foods, and as soon as you get out of the cold, you run off to some fast food place, I'll say McDonald's, but why not? If you run off to some place, you're getting trans fatty acids through the French fries, and you're getting all this crap food, etc., and synthetic products. Your body will use those bad building blocks to build bad cells. And you will be building bad tonsils from bad products because your body is rebuilding cells right now as we speak. Cells are dying and cells are being rebuilt. There are areas like the pancreas and the stomach where cells are turning over every day. In the intestine, they're turning over rapidly. Areas like the eye take 7 years before the eye cells all die and are rebuilt. But every place in the body, you are completely new after 7 years. Some places you're completely new almost every other day or once a week. As you're rebuilding the cells, you're forced to build these cells out of the building blocks that are floating in your blood. The free fatty acids and the free amino acids. These are going to be the building blocks. If you have obeyed the rules of the stomach and let the stomach do its job to prepare the food for the small intestine, inside the small intestine we're going to be absorbing good fats, good amino acids. Whereas if we don't obey the rules of the stomach, we will be digesting large undigested fats, large undigested proteins. And now these large undigested fats and large undigested proteins, if the body only has them to rebuild tissue with, that's all it will use. And you will build back bad cells, bad lung cells, bad liver, bad stomach, bad etc. Because you have disobeyed the rules of the stomach, or even worse, eaten bad food and disobeyed the rules of the stomach. Because the stomach should be able to do its job and process these materials. So we want to listen to the body. That blood that happens, because after the cells have been hit by this virus, at a certain time, all of a sudden, many cells have been destroyed, and there's a turning point. Oftentimes, the first sign of blood is actually a good sign that you're coming out of the cold. But sometimes that blood can be too much. There can be too much cellular destruction, and we get hemorrhaging. The best way to prevent that, or to even treat it at its early stage, is to get lots of good natural vitamin K, which is very rich in the cabbage. So lots of cabbage juice, because it's easier to extract that vitamin K when it's juicified. Cabbage is a very good thing that has been used for many years to help people. And cabbage can be used to help with a little bit of the aniseed and other things. Cabbage with paprika for the potassium. And what do? You have something that's going to help you fight that hemorrhaging. that vitamin K is one of the strongest stimulators of your coagulation. So we want to get some good cabbage juice into us to help prevent or to even treat the early stages of that hemorrhaging. If we are still failing and the hemorrhaging is continuing, that's a major sign that we want to get to the doctor. There's a time for the doctor, but we want to make sure that we're not just rushing in there early and creating problems. As my children grew up, at the earliest sign of a flu, we would do what we called the lemon scrub. We take a lemon, cut it in half. We use half of the lemon juice into a little mixture with water to make for an enema. Nice little enema, because the lemon is a very acid thing and has lots of free protons in it. And the acid protons from the lemon are a stimulator to the immune system. We would use this as an enema, cleanse into an enema bag and use it as an enema to help turn on the immune system from the bowel. The other half of the lemon I would rub all over the body. My son Daniel called it the Pac-Man scrub because it looked like Pac-Man going all over his body. We rub the lemon all over the body. That would give a little extra tonic to the immune system, as the immune system would start to switch and start to be tingly through the skin. Then a nice hot bath, even with a fever, because the fever is a sign that the body wants to burn up something. Now I mean the low stages of a fever, not the high stages. The low stages of a fever. At the early signs of a fever, the body's trying to burn up something. Let's help it out. That hot bath, relax the body, go to bed, bundle up, and sweat out. Because sweating is what the body wants to do. When we sweat, when we turn up that furnace a little bit, there are lots of proteins that are being destroyed, bad proteins. And viruses can't replicate at high temperatures. Neither can fungus and many bacteria. So that's one of the reasons why your body goes into a fever. However, at 106, dramatic damage can be done by the fever. So when we are slipping towards that 103.5, that's when we want to start doing some ice water baths, some alcohol scrubs, and that's when you want to be considering calling the doctor. Now you've got a problem. You can't slip past that 106 point. We got to stop something before it gets that far. But at a fever of 101, or even 101.5, 102, that's a time that we need to do something naturally at home. Bundle up, sweat out the fever, use some of the lemon juice, orally and rectally. It can help you. The H1N1, which is hitting us now, hit in 1918, that big Spanish, like back in the, hit through the 20s and killed just millions and millions. Estimates up to 30 million, maybe more, people died. A lot of people say antibiotics could have prevented that. I believe antibiotics are helpful at the secondary infections, and that could be true. But I think it was the lack of really good sewage control in the areas that it was hit hardest, and good nutrition, and many of the changes that were happening in our society. Sunlight helps to defeat this. We talked about the seasonal times. That's also always a time also where we're getting less sunlight, less vitamin D from the sun. Vitamins are a big part of this. But sunlight also helps us in many different ways. So we need to get some exposure to sunlight and get out of the house. Nostradamus was one of the key people in history that helped to stop the Black Plague. He was one of the guys. Some say he was the guy because he was the doctor who said, get out of the house. The plague was killing millions because they were all stuck in the house and they didn't want to go out. They were afraid of the influence, the evil eye. And they weren't getting sunshine, they were getting bad air, bad water, bad food. And when they started to get out into the natural environment, the sun will burn off the viruses. And they started getting good water and good food. And water is very, very important. Most of these viruses are water soluble. At the earliest exposure to a virus, take lots and lots and lots of water, because this water will help to boost and carry away the virus. Very, very good. Be sure to hydrate. We've already said that some of the danger areas was that of temperature. We hit that temperature. Extra bleeding, danger area. Other danger signs such as dementia, inability to talk, spasms, etc. These need to be rushed off to the doctor. We need to be able to understand these different symptoms and recognize when the danger areas hit. And when you get that feeling that you really are slipping, but that really should be held off, and you should not rush off to the doctor for the sniffle. Viruses work by cleaving sugar, and it's very important that we get away from those different sugars for many different reasons. But let's talk about something else that's healing. Something else that's very healing is blood. That's what our blood is supposed to be. Carry the antibodies, bring oxygen, carry away the carbon dioxide, bring food, bring nutrition, carry away the waste products. Blood is where we live. Very important. We need to get blood to these different areas. That's one of the big reasons for the deep muscle relaxation, to help blood to oscillate. But we also need to get some activity to help this blood oscillate and to get lymphatic drainage. I teach my children, I teach my patients a very simple trick to start to deal with these flu when they hit. It's a thing called the lion. This is a yoga position taught to me years and years ago. And it is very good at treating this type of flu. You get the lion. You get the exposure and it hits the tonsils. You're getting sore throat, you're getting headaches, you're getting sinusitis, rhinitis, you're getting problems. You need the healthy blood to get to the area and take away the bad energy, take away the bad viruses, the toxins, etc. Now in the lion, you stick out your tongue as far as you can. Make as ugly a face as you possibly can. No wisecracks about my ugly face. Hold this, right? You hold this position for 30 seconds. Hold that position, the lion, for 30 seconds. 10 seconds, relax. Again, 30 seconds. 10 seconds, relax. And a third time. This is the lion. This contraction of energy of the muscles will bring blood. You can probably see I'm already a little more red. That's not a computer trick. That's blood coming. If you do these 3 times, it'll have very good effects. It will scare the people. If you're in the car, it will scare the other drivers. I do this in the car all the time. I don't close my eyes. I make sure I'm watching the road. Now let's talk about the symptoms. Well, how do you really know that it's not an allergy, that it's really a cold, a flu? Fever tells us that it's influenza and not just an allergy. Also, we're going to be able to get that fatigue, headaches, that feeling that something isn't right, that stiffness in the neck, etc., in the back, that little extra malaise, we call it, that stiffness, that bad feeling. You feel like something's coming down, and you feel this. You get that chill. You're starting into that fever. Watering eyes, redness of the skin, redness around the eyes, runny nose, sinusitis, sore throat. Now you're starting to see that you're getting into that respiratory influenza. As you're getting into the respiratory influenza, it's important for us to recognize that in the early states, we want to be able to get some good prevention now. Lots and lots of water, lemon scrub, Pac-Man scrub, rest, relaxation, good vitamins, good nutrition, good oils, good sugars. Take care of yourself and don't rush off to the doctor. Make sure that you are getting your body to relax, allowing the parasympathetic relaxation system of the body to develop the antibodies. Echinacea is very good to help oscillate and get things going. Now is a good time for us to get some extra vitamin C And we used to talk about using vitamin C 1,000 milligrams an hour until we got a bowel flush. That was the old idea. Take 1,000 milligrams of vitamin C every hour until the bowels started to flush, and that's a sign you're getting too much vitamin C. But now I believe that you should just really get an extra 1,000 or 2,000, no more than that, a day from whatever you've taken before. Taking extra vitamin C kicks the immune system from whatever you're taking before. And I don't believe that large doses of vitamin C should be part of the normal diet. I think you should be getting your vitamin C from foods and very little from supplementation until you need it at the first sign of a cold or flu. Vitamins A, vitamin C, vitamin E, vitamin K, but these are much better taken in from foods, but good natural supplements can help to assist these. Make sure you're getting those good fatty acids, some good mixture of oil, not just olive oil, and you're getting those into the body and taking care of yourself. These are the things that you need to do at the start. Now, it is said that for most part, it is 3 days onset. 3 days that you're catching the flu, it's onset. Then 3 days you get the flu, and then 3 days that you detox, that you're recovering. So usually it's about a 9-day process. Some people can cut it down to a week, etc., but it's hard to get it down too much because it's a natural part of the cleansing. This is a time for the body to cleanse different cells, cleanse different toxins. We need this. And everybody will catch a flu from time to time. It's because their bodies need to detox. Sometimes they just won't admit it. They don't recognize that they had that bout of diarrhea for a while. But yet, that is true. Now, we've talked about respiratory, but also there's a thing called the intestinal flu. The intestinal flu, usually what's called the 24-hour virus, where that virus gets into the intestine and creates diarrhea and cleansing and discharge. There again, lots and lots of water. If there's any type of blood sign, lots and types of cabbage juice, because cabbage juice helps to heal all those different types of hemorrhaging, etc. Good vitamins, good nutrition, good fatty acids, not in excess. Good sugars, not in excess. Take care, listen to the body, and listen to what you need. Now, the development of antibiotics largely took place when Lister started to see that if he had urine that could grow bacteria, a little bit of mold in that urine, and the urine would not grow bacteria. Fleming started to carry that further, and some of the first antibiotics were natural, made simply from the different types of fungus that grew on oranges. Just as the old story was about how he found an orange with the fungus killed bacteria. That's why they used it. Because in nature, we will find that bacteria, fungus, and virus all are in balance. And each one can kill each other at different times or assist each other. Why? Because the natural world could not have one thing dependent. It would eat up all the stores and die. There's a balance. The more antibiotics we take, the more we will interfere with the immune system. If we interfere with the immune system, we're going to increase the ability of that virus to kill. So antibiotics are going to be contraindicated in the viral cases, as well as the antifungals. Because the fungus and bacteria can help to kill that virus, help to keep it in check. This is very important for us to realize, the balance. Now, other types of natural antibiotics that would kill, another type of antibiotic found was the sulfa. And this is also found from different sulfur compounds. So there was things like nascent sulfur, which is found in garlic, onion, cayenne pepper. These nascent sulfur compounds are also antibacterial and antimicroorganism. And they can assist even in the flu. So one of the things we found is that your mother would make you a bowl of onion soup, garlic soup. Put a little extra onion or garlic into the chicken soup. This would help. The soup would help to relax the areas and help to carry some of this nascent sulfur. What I have found is if I take a gargle of half part water to half part Tabasco, cayenne pepper, a little tiny bit of salt, Gargle with that, don't swallow it, but gargle with that, and that will create an opening of the mucous membranes and let the crap come out of my mucous membranes in the throat. So for any time I get a sore throat, I'm going to do the lion and I'm going to do the cayenne pepper gargle. This will create and open up those areas and clean out all the different crud that is caught inside the mucous membranes, and much of that is the virus. So to get rid of that, I do that type of gargle. Then I found if I could mash up onions, strong onions, spicy, mash up the garlic, mash up strong pepper, mash up the cayenne, curry, very strong pepper, and make like a elixir, a very concentrated mixture. So concentrated, but naturally, use this at the home, but naturally, so it'd be very, very spicy. And then just 6 to 10 drops of that inside the back of the throat, on the tongue, and it could have a very powerful effect at helping to control the effects of these different influenza viruses. Because now we're talking about in the middle, not just early prevention. What to do when you're in the middle 3 days and you got the virus and you're feeling terrible. What are you going to need to do? You're going to need to have some activity to get some blood going, but very light activity, because you do want stress reduction, relaxation. Hot baths, bundling up to help get some distension of the tissue. We want to be able to use wintergreen and the different China oils, these other different things that we put onto the sore areas. This is going to help bring blood to the area and orient. They use cupping. Got a little suction cup that would bring blood to an area. We want to get blood to an area. Massage, help bring blood to the area. Lymphatic drainage massage by pushing onto the little intercostal spaces and to help to drain. And one of the things I've done for my children with earaches is we take the ear when they have an earache and we draw down from the center of the ear, draw down from here, down through the tonsil area with the finger, drawing down 50 times, pushing, 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 dragging through the pain. And I know that this will hurt in many cases, but keep doing it lightly. We want a little bit of pain, but not so much to make the child, even in, some children are very oversensitive, but we want to get it so we're stimulating drainage. Do this 50 times down, always down, to stimulate drainage. Then we take the little tragus, which is a little part of the ear right there in front, close it, put the finger over top of it so they don't hear anything, close both of the tragus and pump 50 times, very hard. This will help push all the crap out of the ear. Then we take the fleshy area of the palm, rub it into the ear, pushing it in every direction. You'll hear snap, crackle, pop in the little different ligaments that are charged up with the virus. We push this and then we pump another 50 times. Stretch, pump, stretch, pump. We do this another 50 times, and this will create all the toxins that will flow down now into the lymph that you've opened because you've drawn down 50 times. You massage between the intercostal spaces, stimulating lymph drainage, and you will get all that poison out of the ears, out of the throat, out of the sinuses, to help to drain, bringing in good blood. Then teach them the lion, and you got good blood coming in. You're going to be getting rid of all that stuff. You want to make sure you're getting some nice, deep relaxation, not conflict, not emotional conflict, not psychological conflict. Relaxation. Watch some nice movies, positive ideas, good nutrition, good air. Take care of yourself. And the first step in taking care of yourself is to care for yourself. Really care. Care for your loved ones. Care for yourself. If you care, you take care of yourself. And you take care of yourself so that then you can take care of others. Little mask drops down in the airplane. Stewardess says, but You know, mothers, put that mask on yourself first, then put it on your child. Because if you put the mask on the child first, you might succumb and fall over. Take care of yourself. And first step, care about yourself. Using some licorice, aniseed, wintergreen, curry, many of these other different remedies. We're going to show some on the screen now. Very good, strong, natural remedies for cold and flu. Try to use these as much as possible. In the stores, you're going to find a host of them. You'll find that some of them work, some of them don't. Some of them might work for you, not for others. Find out what works for you. Keep it on the shelf. Be ready. Because when this cold and flu hits, in the cold and flu season, keep in mind just how to take care of yourself. And if you're getting the good oils and the good sugars, and you get good care of yourself, and you're getting exercise and stress reduction and balance in your life, you're going to build up your immune system and be able to handle it. And when it hits, recognize it's just nature. You're cleansing. You're getting rid of toxins. Use this as a time for reflection. Use this as a time to build. Use it as a time for the family to get closer. Don't run off to the doctor to get a synthetic drug that will just maybe produce a complication. Try to hold off until the last signs before you really, if you need the doctor's there. The doctor's there to help you. If you see abnormal symptoms, if you see some kinds of problems, etc., you might have to go to the doctor. But don't run off to the doctor just at the earliest case. If you can care about yourself and care about your diet and nutrition and exercise, you can deal with these viruses. So this is Dr. Desiree Dubonnet signing off. If you have questions, get to me. I'm the Professor Emeritus of Immune.